they're getting 50%, they might think I need more. If they're getting 120%, they might think, oh, a little bit too much, but maybe it's okay. So that's why these figures are so important. That's why they're so vital. And the problem is that where do they get these figures from? Well, at this meeting on Saturday, the last day of October, most of the delegates were looking to, I'd say 99% of the delegates were looking to the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Health Organization, the WHO, for guidance, because these two international bodies that actually created the Codex Alimentarius Commission in the first place and still provide the funding for it, the bulk of the funding, they do what are known as expert consultations. That is, they get a group of experts together to evaluate and pass judgment upon certain science, so-called science. And in this case, they've established the NRVs that are had at 60 milligrams for vitamin C, and other amounts of a lesser, for instance, niacin at 18 milligrams, magnesium at 300 milligrams, and the like, and the list goes on. They even established a value for fluoride, saying it's very beneficial to consume this, which is amazing, since we're trying to eliminate it from as a toxin from our water supply, and since the state of California is on the verge of declaring it a cancer-causing chemical. In any event, so I spoke up at the meeting and sort of launched broke the logjam, at least in terms of those who were thinking about it but not expressing their feelings, that FAO and WHO are not God. They put on their pants one leg at a time, just like everyone else, and that we should consider other sources of information than just FAO, WHO. And it was amazing. After I spoke out on that subject, then others started to speak up, including, interestingly enough, even the U.S. delegation and the European Commission delegation, which want to rely on other information than just the FAO, because the way the standards were written is to get our information, our numbers, our hard numbers for these NRVs and other sources. We had to only look at FAO, WHO, and maybe you could think about, maybe if it's super well done, you could consider another source. So this to me was, outrageous, and I said that, and then some others joined in. So it ended up, we had a bit of a victory on Saturday where other information from other sources could be considered as well. It was still worded not quite the way I wanted, but it was close enough, and that's what came out of the committee was because of our efforts to do that. So that was a small but important victory. One reason it's very important, and it may seem boring as a topic, but actually it has enormous downstream effects from this, is because the FAO, it used to be more than 10 years ago, back before 1999, they would select, when they did their expert consultations, they would select a broad base of individuals to consult from, different areas of expertise, different opinions, and the like. But starting in about 1999, FAO decided, we know what's best. We know how we want it to come out, so we're going to pick those people that support our view and that will give us the predetermined result that we want. So that's why their science is so dangerous right now, because it's not science, it's just what they decided they wanted to have the result be, and that's what they're doing. So instead of picking a broad base now, they'll handpick Joe over here, Fred here, Sally there, and then those are their experts because they know Fred, Joe, and Sally, for example, are going to make a determination their way, the FAO's way or the WHO wo's way. And by the way, the WHO is far worse than FAO at this, and they're very anti-food and anti-agriculture. The FAO, the name, Food and Agriculture Organization, at least they have an orientation towards food and agriculture, but WHO is totally drug-oriented. And if anyone thinks differently, they're fooling themselves. And and actually, I want to reiterate again, a lot of the FAO staff I have the utmost admiration for because they are so helpful, they are so well-meaning, and they do not have an agenda. It's just some of the other people who have the agenda. And so this is a problem, though, because we're coming up with bad science. That's why it's so important to refer to other scientific bodies. But getting back to the U.S. and the EC, they want to go to, in the case of the U.S. Government, they want to be able to refer to findings from the Institute of Medicine. The European Community, they want to refer to the EFSA findings at various times. So they have different agendas themselves, but still a similar goal, and that is to not just rely on FAO, WHO. So we didn't meet any resistance from the US or EC, but they did put in qualifying language that was not that great, with Canada being the worst, because they wanted the other scientific bodies to say, it was done according to strict principles of science, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I suggested to the committee, the working group, that we put that language in for the FAO WHO. If it's good for the goose, then it's good for the gander also.
Yeah. And
but that didn't make it. That's why I say it was somewhat of a victory, but not 100%. And so anyway, that's important. But the real victory came on Tuesday, November 3rd, and that was when they brought up the actual NRV values. I mentioned some of them just a few minutes ago. And these are the ones for non-communicable diseases that they're trying to set. And I looked at the document that had been prepared by another working group that I hadn't been able to attend, that was chaired by the government of South Korea, and I saw the figures were hideous. They were 60, it was a proposed draft paper. They wanted to reduce the NRV, the nutrient reference value, for vitamin C from 60 milligrams down to 45 milligrams. They wanted to reduce niacin from 18 milligrams down to 15 milligrams. They wanted to chop the magnesium level from 300, which is already too low anyway, down to 240. All of these are already too low figures. They wanted to reduce them even further. I was fit to be tied when I saw that. And so I read this during a break, and I went back into the meeting. And during an almost approximately 1 hour battle, it first started out with Costa Rica. Countries get to speak first, and some other countries supported it. Korea read the report, and everyone thanked Korea for such a wonderful document, etc. And, so disgusting.
Yeah. And
then Costa Rica just peeped up and said, well, because they could speak before NHF. I'd already pushed the button to speak, but they recognize countries before the INGOs, like the National Health Federation. So anyway, Costa Rica said, well, we think the value for vitamin A is too low I think it had been reduced to 550 micrograms from 800. And so that was all they said. And then a lot of these countries, they just make one statement and then that's it, and they let it go. So even with Costa Rica saying that, it was going to be adopted. You could see it hovering on the edge of being adopted. And then the chairman called on me, and I lambasted them. I said, this document is absurd. I don't know who came up with it, but it's going to make Codex the laughingstock of the world, because I knew that would get to the chairman, because chairman doesn't like to be made a laughingstock of. And it will be a public relations nightmare for Codex, because these figures are way too low. And then I went through the reasons why they were too low and gave some specific examples in the case of vitamin C. And I said, these all have to be raised. And then no one said anything. And then Australia chimed in. And Australia's position is that harsher standards are good because they provide, quote, and this is an exact quote from the Australian delegate, Janine Lewis, they provide an extra degree of comfort. Yeah, what? For the regulator, an extra degree of comfort. So, it's not enough to just handcuff the person. You want to handcuff them. You want to blindfold them. You wanted to tie their legs, put them in a closet, and then lock the building as well, just for an extra degree of comfort.
Yeah,
You know,
God.
these people, I mean, are insane.
Yeah.
They have no concept of real nutrition, and this just highlights it exactly. Meanwhile, the U.S. and the EC were